4 years since Russian tanks crossed the Ukrainian border in the early hours of February 24, 2022. 4 years of missiles, trenches, and devastation. And the world is still asking the same question: when will this end? Today, we answer that question. With data, with numbers, and with an honest look at what the evidence actually tells us. As of March 2026, Russia controls approximately 20% of Ukrainian territory, including most of the Donbas region, Crimea, and portions of Zaporizhia and Kherson oblasts. The front line stretches over 1,000 kilometers, and despite 4 years of brutal fighting, that line has barely moved. Russian forces have advanced at an average rate of just 15 to 70 meters per day in their most prominent offensives, slower than almost any major offensive campaign in the last century. This is not a war moving toward a decisive victory for either side. This is a war of attrition, and attrition has a breaking point. Let's start with the most sobering number: human lives. Since February 2022, Russian forces have suffered nearly 1.2 million casualties, more losses than any major power in any war since World War II. On Ukraine's side, estimates suggest up to 600,000 casualties, with as many as 140,000 deaths. Combined, that's approaching 2 million casualties in just 4 years. But here's what makes 2026 a critical turning point. For the first time since the invasion began, Russia is now losing more soldiers than it can recruit. Western officials report that since November 2025, Russia has been losing approximately 40,000 soldiers per month. 40,000 per month. That is not sustainable. Not militarily, not politically, not demographically. War doesn't just cost lives, it costs money. And Russia's economy is beginning to fracture under the weight of this conflict. Russian manufacturing declined at its fastest rate since March 2022 throughout 2025, 7 consecutive months of contraction. Economic growth has slowed to just 0.6%. Barely above recession territory. The IMF projects only 0.8% growth for Russia in 2026. Inflation is surging, consumer demand is collapsing, and a severe labor shortage is hitting Russian factories and farms because millions of working-age men are either dead, injured, or deployed. One of the most telling signals? Moscow has announced plans to cut defense spending by at least 7% in 2026. When a country at war starts cutting its military budget, it is a confession that the economy simply cannot keep pace with the ambition. A CSIS report concluded that Russia is being transformed into a second or third-rate economic power. The Kremlin knows this, and it changes the calculus for peace. But we must be equally honest about Ukraine's situation. Russia's sustained missile and drone campaign against Ukrainian energy infrastructure has been devastating. As of January 2026, Ukraine's energy system can meet only 60% of national electricity demand. Blackouts stretch for hours, sometimes days, across the country, including the capital, Kyiv. The economic damage is staggering. A single day of full-scale war costs Ukraine an average of $172 million. The total estimated cost of reconstruction? $588 billion, nearly 3 times Ukraine's entire annual GDP. Direct physical damage to infrastructure, homes, and industry has already surpassed $195 billion. Ukraine is fighting with extraordinary courage, but it cannot fight forever without either massive continued Western support or a deal. So we have a war where Russia is running out of soldiers and money, and Ukraine is running out of electricity and infrastructure. Neither side can win decisively on the battlefield, and the human cost is approaching numbers not seen since the Second World War. This is the foundation of our prediction. Now, let's look at the diplomacy. The peace talks already underway, and the 4 scenarios for how this war concludes. Here is what most people don't realize. A peace framework already exists, and it is closer to completion than the headlines suggest. Following talks between President Trump and President Zelensky at the end of 2025, Zelensky himself stated that 90% of a potential peace deal had been agreed. 90%. 3 rounds of talks between U.S., Ukrainian, and Russian officials were held in the United Arab Emirates and Switzerland in late January and February of 2026. European heavyweights are now directly involved. The United Kingdom and France signed a declaration of intent to send troops to Ukraine to safeguard any future deal, pledging to establish military hubs across the country. The diplomatic architecture is real, the framework exists, so what is the remaining 10%? The single biggest obstacle to peace can be summarized in one sentence. Putin wants full control of Ukraine's Donetsk Oblast. Ukraine refuses. Russia currently controls only about 60% of Donetsk. Putin is demanding 100% as a condition of any deal. Ukraine, meanwhile, has shown willingness to accept a demilitarized buffer zone, international security guarantees, and even potential delays on NATO membership. But surrendering an entire province, including cities still under Ukrainian control, is a red line Kyiv cannot easily cross. The Kremlin has also been accused of bad faith tactics, including fabricating a Ukrainian drone attack on Putin's residence as a pretext to walk back from talks. A CSIS assessment concluded that without greater economic and military pressure on Moscow, Putin will drag the talks out and keep fighting, even if it costs millions more casualties. This is the defining variable, Putin's willingness or unwillingness to accept less than his maximalist demand. Let's return to the battlefield for one final reality check. According to the latest Institute for the Study of War data, for the week of March 3rd through 10th, 2026, Russian forces actually lost 30 square miles of Ukrainian territory. This directly contradicts Putin's public claims to President Trump that Russian forces are advancing successfully. The truth on the ground, neither army can mount a sustained war-winning offensive. Russia's massive manpower advantage is being offset by Ukrainian drone warfare, Western-supplied artillery, and fortified defensive lines. Ukraine's technological edge is being offset by Russian missile and glide bomb superiority and sheer numbers of soldiers. The result? A grinding, catastrophic stalemate, the classic precondition for an armistice. Based on all this evidence, here are the 4 most likely scenarios for how this war ends, and the probability we assign to each. Scenario 1. A frozen ceasefire probability. 50% the most likely outcome. Fighting formally stops along the current front line. Russia keeps the territory it holds. Ukraine receives security guarantees from Western nations. Core political disputes, NATO membership, Donetsk, Crimea, remain officially unresolved. This is the Korean War model, an armistice, not a peace treaty. The war technically never ends, but the shooting stops. Timeline, mid to late 2026. Scenario 2, a prolonged war. Probability, 30%. Putin refuses any compromise short of his territorial demands. Western support for Ukraine fractures due to political changes or financial fatigue. Talks collapse. Fighting continues into 2027 and beyond. This scenario becomes more likely if the 10% gap in negotiations cannot be bridged. Timeline 2027 and beyond. Scenario 3. A comprehensive peace treaty. Probability 10%. Both sides make genuine, major concessions. Formal treaty is signed. Ukraine receives binding security guarantees, potentially including NATO membership. Russia accepts defined borders. The best-case scenario, but requires Putin to abandon maximalist demands and Ukraine to accept painful territorial realities. Timeline 2027 to 2028 at the earliest. 9004, a dramatic reversal. Probability 10%. Either Ukraine achieves a major battlefield breakthrough with upgraded Western weapons, or Russia experiences a domestic political crisis that forces a rapid withdrawal. Highly unlikely in the near term, but history has surprised us before. Timeline unpredictable. So, our final prediction, based on 4 hard realities. 1. Combined casualties approaching 2 million, with Russia now losing more soldiers per month than it can replace. 2. Russia's economy contracting, with defense budget cuts signaling fiscal exhaustion. 3. A 90% complete peace framework already on the table, with active US, European, and Gulf state mediation. 4. A completely stalled battlefield that offers neither side a realistic path to decisive victory. Our verdict, a frozen ceasefire modeled on the Korean armistice, is the most likely outcome, arriving sometime between mid and late 2026. This will not be a clean ending. There will be no victory parade for either side. Ukraine will not recover all its territory. Russia will not achieve its maximalist goals. But the guns will, most likely, go silent. The question that will remain is whether a frozen conflict becomes a foundation for eventual peace or simply a pause before the next war. Behind every number in this analysis, there is a human being, a family, a home, a life interrupted or ended. The data tells us when this war might end, but it cannot tell us how to measure 4 years of loss. What we can say is this: the evidence points toward an ending. Not a perfect one, not a just one, but an ending nonetheless. And for millions of people in Ukraine and in Russia, that cannot come soon enough. If this analysis helped you understand what's really happening in this conflict, share it with someone who needs to see it. Drop your prediction in the comments. Do you think this war ends in 2026? And subscribe for more data-driven geopolitical analysis, because the world deserves more signal and less noise.